Away of Bhishma Dev, text 43 to 45. Anyway, thank you very much, Karuna Chaitanya Prabhu, for inviting me to give this class. I'll try my best to say something worthwhile. Please don't hesitate to correct me or fill in any gaps that I leave. And hopefully together we can relish Srimad Bhagavatam. I'll just briefly chant Jai Radha Madhava and then have a Mangala Charanam. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Gopi Janavalabha Girivaradari Jaya Gopi Janavalabha Girivaradari Yashodanandana Braja Janaranjana Yashodanandana Braja Janaranjana Yamuna Tira Vanachari Yamuna Tira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Om Gyantimirandasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshu Militam Jena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Svapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Uttapada Kamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavam Cha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunatham Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakan Vitam Cha Hey Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandho Jagapate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namastute Tapta Kanchana Gourangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Rishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Vanchakalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhu Bhyevacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shri Vasari Gaura Bhaktavrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. So, as I said, we're reading Canto 1, Chapter 9, The Passing Away of Bhishma Dev. We'll start with text 43. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. So I'll chant the verse. Sutta Uvacha Krishna Evam Bhagavati Mano Vagdristi Vrittibihi Atmanyatmanam Avesha Sunta Swasa Uparamat. Word for word. Sutta Uvacha. Sutta Goswami said, Krishna, Lord Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Evam, only, Bhagavati, unto him, Mana, with mind, Vak, speech, Dristi, sight, Rittibihi, activities, Atmani, unto the Supersoul, Atmanam, the living being, Avesha, having merged in, Saha, he, Anta Shvasaha, inhaling, Uparamat, became silent. Translation. By His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Sutta Goswami said, thus Bhishma Dev merged himself in the Supersoul, Lord Sri Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, with his mind, speech, sight, and actions. And thus he became silent and his breathing stopped. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. The stage attained by Bhishma Dev while quitting his material body is called Nirvikalpa Samadhi, because he merged his self into thinking of the Lord and his mind into remembering his different activities. He chanted the glories of the Lord, and by his sight he began to see the Lord personally present before him. And thus all his activities became concentrated upon the Lord without deviation. This is the highest stage of perfection. And it is possible for everyone to attain this stage by practice of devotional service. The devotional service of the Lord consists of 9 principles of service activities, and they are 1. Hearing, 2. Chanting, 3. Remembering, 4. Serving the lotus feet, 5. Worshipping, 6. Praying, 7. Executing the orders, 8. Fraternizing, and 9. Fully surrendering. Any one of them or all of them are equally competent to award the desired result, but they require to be practiced persistently under the guidance of an expert devotee of the Lord. The first item, hearing, is the most important item of all, and therefore, hearing of the Bhagavad Gita and later on Srimad Bhagavatam is essential for the serious candidate who wants to attain the stage of Bhishma Dev at the end. The unique situation at Bhishma Dev's time of death can be attained, even though Lord Krishna may not be personally present. His words of the Bhagavad Gita or those of Srimad Bhagavatam are identical with the Lord. They are sound incarnations of the Lord, and one can fully utilize them to be entitled to attain the stage of Sri Bhishma Dev, who was one of the 8 Vasus. Every animal or animal must die at a certain stage of life, but one who dies like Bhishma Dev attains perfection, and one who dies forced by the laws of nature dies like an animal. That is the difference between a man and an animal. The human form of life is especially meant for dying like Bhishma Dev. So text 44. Sampajyamanam agyaya bhishmam brahmanishkale save bahuvustu tushnim vayam shiva dinachaye. Word for word. Sampajyamanam, having merged into, agyaya, after knowing this, Bhishman, about Sri Bhishma Dev, Brahmani, unto the Supreme Absolute, Nishkale, unlimited, Salve, all present, Babu Vahate, all of them became, Tushnim, silent, Vayang Siva, like birds, Dina Achyāye, at the end of the day. Translation. Knowing that Bhishma Dev had merged into the unlimited eternity of the Supreme Absolute, all present there became silent like birds at the end of the day. Purport. To enter into or to become merged into the unlimited eternity of the Supreme Absolute means to enter the original home of the living being. The living beings are all component parts and parcels of the Absolute Personality of Godhead, and therefore they are eternally related with Him as the servitor and the served. The Lord is served by all His parts and parcels, as the complete machine is served by its parts and parcels. Any part of the machine removed from the whole is no longer important. Similarly, any part and parcel of the Absolute detached from the service of the Lord is useless. The living beings who are in the material world are all disintegrated parts and parcels of the Supreme Whole. and they are no longer as important as the original parts and parcels. There are, however, more integrated living beings who are eternally liberated. The material energy of the Lord, called Durga Shakti, or the superintendent of the prison house, takes charge of the disintegrated parts and parcels, and thus they undergo a conditioned life under the laws of material nature. When the living being becomes conscious of this fact, he tries to go back home, back to Godhead, and thus the spiritual urge of the living being begins. This spiritual urge is called Brahma Jigyasa, or inquiry about Brahman. Principally, this Brahma Jigyasa is successful by knowledge, renunciation, and devotional service to the Lord. Jnana, or knowledge, means knowledge of everything of Brahman, the Supreme. Renunciation means detachment of material affection, and devotional service is the revival by practice of the original position of the living being. The successful living beings who are eligible to enter into the realm of the Absolute are called the Jnanis, the Yogis, and the Bhaktas. The Jnanis and Yogis enter into the impersonal rays of the Supreme, but the Bhaktas enter into the spiritual planets known as the Vaikunthas. In these spiritual planets, the Supreme Lord as Narayan predominates, and the healthy, unconditioned living beings live there by rendering loving service to the Lord in the capacity of servant, friend, parents, and fiancé. There, the unconditioned living beings enjoy life in full freedom with the Lord, whereas the impersonalist Jnanis and Yogis enter into the impersonal glowing effulgence of the Vaikuntha planets. The Vaikuntha planets are all self-illuminating like the sun, and the rays of the Vaikuntha planets are called the Brahmajyoti. The Brahmajyoti is spread unlimitedly, and the material world is but a covered portion of an insignificant part of the same Brahmajyoti. This covering is temporary, and therefore it is a sort of illusion. Bhishmadev, as a pure devotee of the Lord, entered the spiritual realm in one of the Vaikuntha planets, where the Lord in his eternal form of Parthasarathi predominates over the unconditioned living beings who are constantly engaged in the service of the Lord. The love and affection which bind the Lord and devotee are exhibited in the case of Bhishmadev. Bhishmadev never forgot the Lord in his transcendental feature as the Parthasarathi, and the Lord was present personally before Bhishmadev while he was passing to the transcendental world. That is the highest perfection of life. And the final verse, text 45. Tatra dundu bayo nedo deva manavavaditaha shasham su sadavo ragyam katpetu pushparistaya. Tatra, thereafter, dundu bayaha, drums, nedu were sounded, deva, the demigods from other planets, manava, men from all countries, vaditaha, beaten by, shasham shuhu, praised, sadavaha, honest, ragyam, by the royal order, kat, from the sky, petu, began to fall, pushpa vrishtayaha, showers of flowers. Translation. Thereafter, both men and demigods sounded drums in honor, and the honest royal order commenced demonstrations of honor and respect, and from the sky fell showers of flowers. Purport. Bhishmadev was respected both by the human beings and by the demigods. The human beings live on Earth and similar other planets in the Bhur and Bhuva group of planets. But the demigods live in the Sva, or heavenly planets, and all of them knew Bhishmadev as a great warrior and devotee of the Lord. As a Mahajan, or authority, he was on the level of Brahma, Narada, and Shiva, although he was a human being. Qualification on a par with the great demigods is possible only on attainment of spiritual perfection. Thus, Bhishmadev was known all over the universes, and during his time, interplanetary travel was effected by finer methods than the futile endeavors of mechanical spacecraft. When the distant planets were informed of the passing away of Bhishmadev, all the inhabitants of the upper planets, as well as of the earth, dropped showers of flowers to show due respect to the departed personality. This showering of flowers from heaven is a sign of recognition by great demigods, and it should never be compared to the decoration of a dead body. The body of Bhishmadev lost its material effects due to being surcharged with spiritual realization, and thus the body was spiritualized, as when iron becomes red hot when in contact with fire. The body of a fully self-realized soul is not, therefore, accepted as material. Special ceremonies are observed for such spiritual bodies. The respect and recognition of Bhishmadev are never to be imitated by artificial means, as it has become a fashion to observe the so-called Jayanti ceremony for any and every common man. According to authorized Shastras, such a Jayanti ceremony for an ordinary man, however exalted he may be materially, is an offense to the Lord, because Jayanti is reserved for the day when the Lord appears on the earth. Bhishmadev was unique in his activities, and his passing away to the kingdom of God is also unique. Om Agyan Timirandasya Gananjana Shalakaya Chaksho Militam Jena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Srimati Radhanath Swami Iti Namane. Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Srimati Bhakti Vedanta Swami Iti Namane. Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nivishesha Shunyavadi Paschata Deshatarine. Hare Krishna. So I beg for the blessings of all the assembled devotees to be able to say something of worth about these three wonderful verses and purports. So the first verse again, Sutta Uvacha Krishna evam bhagavati manovagdristi rittibihi atmanyatmanamavesha sonta kshvasa uparamat. Translation, Sutta Goswami said, thus Bhishmadev merged himself in the Super Soul, Lord Sri Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, with his mind, speech, sight, and actions, and thus he became silent, and his breathing stopped. So, Bhishma's finished speaking, and in this verse, he actually leaves this body and leaves the material realm. And this is very significant. In fact, I'm going to just start with the very last sentence of this purport, where Srila Prabhupada says, the human form of life is especially meant for dying like Vishnudev. So I start with that, just to set our minds. Of course, we'll get into the details of it as far as we can. But the fact is that this is what the human life is for. Be able to leave this body, because this is Machaloka. It's the planet of death, basically. So our purpose in life is actually to leave this material world and to go back home, back to Godhead. And of course, that is exemplified by Parikshit Maharaj, because he asked a very important question of Shukadev Goswami when he said, what is the duty of a man about to die? And that is the question that we should all be asking ourselves. What should we be doing when we're about to die? And of course, when we're young, we can't really understand so much that we're about to die, but we could die at any moment. You only have to listen to the news and you'll see that people of all ages are leaving their bodies suddenly, unexpectedly. But of course, as we get older, as like myself, we start to really feel it more imminent. And therefore, it's, I believe, Krishna's arrangement, old age, and all its symptoms, the symptoms of the body becoming weaker, more frail, losing strength, unable to do the things it was able to do before, even eating becomes more problematic because you can't digest so easily. Have to be more careful about what you eat. You can't just enjoy whatever you like to enjoy. You have to choose more carefully. You have to refuse things that you would like to accept, things like that. So you can't basically enjoy it so much. So Shukadev Goswami, he answers the question, the beginning of the second canto. And first of all, he glorifies this question. What a wonderful question you asked, because it's beneficial for all kinds of people. And the answer to this question is this prime subject matter for hearing. Because in the purport, Srila Prabhupada says, he lists the 9 principles of service activities. First one being hearing, Shravanam. And then he says that hearing is the most important. And so that's what Shukadev Goswami is saying also, that the answer to this question is the prime subject matter for hearing. And it is approved by all transcendentalists. So remember what the question is. The question is, what is the duty of a person about to die? And this is his answer. So then he says, what not to do in life. And assuming that we could die at any moment, everybody, whatever age, young or old or middle-aged, everybody should be thinking, what is my duty? Because I could die at any moment. So he's, first of all, Shukadev Goswami says what you shouldn't do. You shouldn't, and he described, by describing those people who are not doing the right thing. He says those persons who are materially engrossed, being blind to the knowledge of ultimate truth, have many subject matters for hearing in human society, O Emperor. So we know there's unlimited subject matters practically in this world that we can get engrossed in. But somehow or other, we have to lose interest in those things. You know, things like politics and sports, sociology, economics, business, drama, art. Of course, any of those things engaged in Krishna service are not material. But he goes on to say, he describes actually an envious householder. So this isn't just for the renunciates, for those who somehow or other, either through genuine renunciation or just through being kicked out, it's also for the householders. We all should become, all those who are in household life should become grihastas, not grihamedis. So he says the lifetime of such an envious householder is passed at night, either in sleeping or in sex indulgence, and in the daytime, either in making money or maintaining family members. Of course, if it's our responsibilities, our duty, our service, we should maintain those that are dependent on ourselves. And therefore we have to make some money. But that should be done as a service to Krishna. Then he goes on to say, persons devoid of Atma-tattva, devoid of understanding of the soul, the truth about the soul, do not inquire into the problems of life, being too attached to the fallible soldiers like the body, children, and wife. Although sufficiently experienced, they still do not see their inevitable destruction. So we can't place our faith, our trust in fallible soldiers like the body. The body is definitely fallible. It's not perfect. It has so many failings. It's perfect for its purpose. In other words, it is a gift of Krishna. Krishna has given us this human form of life, which we should be grateful for, but we should use it in the service of Krishna. Just like Prabhupada says, I don't know if it's in this first purport, maybe in the second one, that actually we are the eternal servants of Krishna. Jivera Swarupoi Krishnera Nitya Das, the eternal servants of Krishna. That is the constitutional position of the of the soul. So the body is fallible. It's going to die at some point. Children, although they may want to help us, they may love us, actually what can they do when that time comes? When the body is destroyed, when the body fails. Of course, if they're devotees, they can support us. They can chant Hare Krishna. They can try to make us comfortable physically. They can read to us. They can chant. They can sing kirtan, bhajans. They can place pictures of Krishna so that we can see them when we leave this body. And all that is very valuable, but ultimately, it's our consciousness which is going to count the most. All their help, it will be useless if our consciousness is on something material. And of course, the same applies to the wife or husband. The tendency is to feel that, yes, I'm okay, I have a good wife, I have a good husband, but one of them is going to leave first, usually. Very rare that couples leave their bodies at the same time, unless they're in a car crash or something like that. And then the other person is left alone. So they're all fallible. Also, for instance, parents. When we're very young, we feel that our parents are all in all, and they're always looking after us and looking out for us. But then ultimately they leave. Involuntarily or voluntarily, they have to go. So then Sukadeva Goswami gives a positive answer. He says, Tasmat Bharata Savatma Bhagavan Ishvaro Harihi Shrotavya Kirtitavyascha Smartavyascha Tadapayam. O descendant of King Bharat, one who desires to be free from all miseries must hear about, glorify, and also remember the personality of Godhead, who is a super soul, the controller, and the savior from all miseries. So this is the positive solution to the problem. First of all, we have to desire to be free from all miseries. Okay, materially, that's an inevitable part of life. Pain is inevitable, but it is said that suffering is voluntary. So I remember Sridhar Swami, Prabhupada disciple, quoting that, saying that. And I was often wondering, what does it really mean? Pain is inevitable, suffering is voluntary. But I was recently reading about that and had a little bit of realization that the body is always going to have some pain or aches to some degree, severe or slight, whatever. But it's how we respond to that pain that counts. And if we lament, if we feel emotionally, we reject it. We're thinking, why me? Why am I suffering like this? Then it becomes real suffering. But if you can just accept it, tolerate, as Krishna says, matra spashasta kunteya, sitoshna sukha dukkada, agama paino nityas, tamstatikshvasabhat, bharata, just tolerate. And we accept it. You know, okay, this is what is due to me. Since Krishna's in charge, he's providing everything. And I have to try to become grateful for everything, actually, because it's Krishna's arrangement. We've all had a lot of suffering in our lives, I'm sure. It's a very rare person who's being completely happy all the time. Even as devotees, we feel suffering sometimes. But if we understand that it's Krishna's arrangement, he is our best friend. Bhaktaram yagatapasam savaloka maheshwaram suridam savabhutanam mam shantim richati. He's our best friend. He's in control. He knows what he's doing. And therefore, it must be good. And I know for a fact in my life that the suffering I've experienced has helped me to progress much more than the so-called happy times that I've had. So therefore, we have to just tolerate all these miseries for the time being, but not magnify them by lamenting. That's what really causes the suffering. So pain, physical pain, or even emotional pain, which we sometimes feel, we can just observe it and we can let it go. And then, you know, because they're just temporary anyway, they're passing. They're like, gusts of wind, just blowing in and then blowing out again. So one who desires to be free from all miseries. So once we leave this body, when we go back home, back to Godhead, then we can be actually free from all miseries, all material miseries. What is the solution? Shukadev Goswami says he must hear about, glorify, and also remember the personality of Godhead, who is the super soul, the controller, and the savior from all miseries. So this is basically what is being said here by Prabhupada in the purport, that we must take seriously that we're going to leave this body. Our job is not to make ourselves comfortable in this lifetime. Of course, some reasonable comfort is required, but not excessively comfortable. Just ishavasyam idam savam yatkinsha jagat cham jagat chena chaktena bunjita magridha kasasviddanam. Remembering that everything animate or inanimate that's within the universe is controlled and owned by the Lord. One should therefore only accept those things necessary for oneself, which are set aside as one's quota, and not accept not take other things, knowing well to whom they belong. So just what we require, just the necessary to maintain ourselves, our dependence, whatever. That is how we should live, basically. Just getting a bit more into the purport. So Srila Prabhupada says, the stage attained by Bhishma Dev while quitting his material body is called Nivikalpa Samadhi. So this means unwavering total absorption. It's considered like the highest form of samadhi. And of course, samadhi means completely, totally engaged, totally absorbed, totally meditating, experiencing, actually not just meditating, but actually fully experiencing the the glory of the Lord and his name, form, past qualities and pastimes. So Bhishma Dev was at this point of nirvikalpa samadhi. And why does Prabhupada says? He says because he merged himself into thinking of the Lord and his mind into remembering his different activities. So, of course, this is what we're trying to do, trying to constantly chant the holy name, constantly remember the Lord. Shinada pisuni chena, tarora pisa hishnuna, amanina amanadena, kirtaniya sada hari, sada, always, constantly. That should be our goal. And then, if the unexpected should happen, and we leave our body, then we're ready, because we're constantly remembering the Lord, constantly chanting his names, constantly thinking of him. Of course, one factor is that Bhishma Dev, he had the boon of being able to die when he wished to, which we may not have that facility. So he was prepared to lie on a bed of arrows until such time as the Supreme Lord appeared before him. And then he fulfilled his duty of instructing Yudhisthira Maharaj, and then spoke his prayers to the Lord. And then at this point in this verse, he became silent and his breathing stopped. It reminds me, I was in Mayapur, I think it was 2005, when His Holiness Bhakti Tirtha Swami left his body. And that morning, Jananivas Prabhu, I believe it was, could have been Pankaj Jangri, it was one of the two. I think it was Jananivas Prabhu, was giving class the following morning after we'd heard that Bhakti Tirtha Maharaj left his body. And he was speaking about Bhakti Tirtha Swami, and somebody had told him, it might have actually been Radhanath Maharaj, because he was there at the time with Bhakti Tirtha Maharaj. So Jananivas Prabhu, he explained how Bhakti Tirtha Maharaj, as his last moments came, he just let go of his breath. And there was a sigh. And it was like total relaxation. He just let it go. So that I was reminded by that, and his breathing stopped like that. So it was just natural, actually. And then he explained, Jananivas Prabhu, actually, the soul doesn't need to breathe. It doesn't need air. It's sustained by Krishna directly. So, what was that message? So he just let go of his breathing stopped. He became silent after speaking so much, actually. Incredible, he was able to speak so much whilst on a bed of arrows. He chanted the glories of the Lord, and by his sight, so then he's saying how everything has to be engaged. The mind has to be engaged, the speech, the sight, and the actions all have to be engaged in the service of the Lord. And that's what Bhishma Dev achieved. And of course, that's what Srila Prabhupada himself achieved. When he was in Vrindavan in November 1977, he was on his bed, equivalent to a bed of arrows, in other words, suffering physically, apparently, although Srila Prabhupada didn't seem to suffer like an ordinary person. And he was continuing to translate. So everything was engaged. So he gave us that final lesson, how we should approach the end of life, to be engaged 24 hours, 24/7, 365 days of the year. And then Prabhupada gives a very encouraging sentence here. He says, this is the highest stage of perfection, and it is possible for everyone to attain this stage by practice of devotional service. So we have to believe it. Not only is Bhishma Deva Mahajan, but Srila Prabhupada is a Mahajan also. So it is, just remember this, let's just remember this phrase, it is possible for everyone to attain this stage by practice of devotional service. And then he lists the 9, Shravanam, Kirtanam, Vishnu Smaranam, Padasevanam, etc. On that subject, I don't have time to go much more into that, but it was interesting how Prabhupada has said the word for number 8, fraternizing. So that comes actually from brother, fraternal is like a brotherly relationship. So this is more than just friends, actually. Just like when you want, often younger people, not in my day so much when I was young, but nowadays I notice that people will just say, "Hey, brother," and that is a kind of, it's a more intimate, a stronger bond than just being friends. You know, we're brothers. We used to say blood brothers, and we had this arrangement where you would cut your thumb or something, and then put the thumbs together. Both two friends, if they felt really close, let's become blood brothers, and then they would cut their thumbs and then put them together like that and mix their blood, and they were really felt that they were brothers. I don't know if it's such a good idea to do that, but in this day and age. But anyway. So fraternizing. So I was just intrigued by that. And of course, fully surrendering. And then he also says that we don't have to do all of them. Any one of them or all of them actually are competent to award the desired result. But he gives a proviso, but they require to be practiced persistently. So we have to practice them persistently, day in, day out, without fail. And then and not do we have to practice persistently, but under the guidance of an excellent Lord. So we have that guidance of Srila Prabhupada, all his books, whatever it is, 60 volumes of books, as well as his disciples as well. So we just have to put in that persistence. Usaha nisjayat daryat, tat tat karma pravartanat. So that Rupa Goswami says in that verse that there are 6 principles favorable to the execution of pure devotional service. And then he says, enthusiasm, confidence, and patience, and performing the regulative principles such as Shravanam, Kirtanam, Vishnu Smaranam, like that. Giving up the association of non-devotees, and follow the footsteps of the previous acharyas. These 6 principles undoubtedly ensure the complete success of devotional service. So that comes to what Prabhupada says. So I need to just quickly move on. Of course, then he's saying that hearing is most important. We don't have a problem with hearing because we've got Bhagavad Gita and we've got Srimad Bhagavatam. where we can hear so much nectar. And of course, Bhagavad Gita, so many verses are explaining the theme that leaving the body, we have to leave the body, and the consciousness in which to do it. Of course, in the 8th chapter, it explains all about that. And that, what's the yam yam vapi smaram bhavam chajante kalevaram tam tam evaiti kunteya sadatad bhava bhavita. Whatever consciousness you're in when you leave your body, that will determine your destination after leaving the body. So it's such an important point. So therefore, we have to take so seriously Bhagavad Gita and Srimad Bhagavatam, because he says here, they are the sound incarnations of the Lord. I just wanted to quote one other verse just to verify that. Idam Bhagavatam Nama Puranam Brahma Samitam Uttama Shloka Charitam Chakara Bhagavan Rishi Nishrayasaya Lokasya Danyam Svastayanam Mahat. The Srimad Bhagavatam is the literary incarnation of God, and it is compiled by Sri Vasudeva, the incarnation of God. It is meant for the ultimate good of all people, and it is all successful, all blissful, and all perfect. So, so we don't, and Prabhupada finishes off by saying we don't want to die like an animal. What does that mean? It means we just have to go into another species of life in the material world. We want to die like Bhishma Dev. So I'll just quickly go on to try to pick out some of the most relevant points for me, at least, in the next 2 verses. So in text 44, it says, knowing that Bhishma Deva had merged into the unlimited eternity of the Supreme Absolute, all present there became silent like birds at the end of the day. So we're all active, or the birds are all active at the day. They're singing, twittering in the trees, looking for food, doing so many things. But then when the day ends, they become quiet like that. So when we observe something like a great event like this, personality leaving this world and going back home, back to Godhead, we also should meditate on that, be peaceful and think, yes, I want to follow that example as well, and not be so active, not twittering all the time. I wasn't thinking of Twitter, the social media thing, but anyway, it's I don't use Twitter myself, but anyway, it's like they're twittering like birds, and we have to set that aside. And of course, an important point in this purport is that merging means actually just going back to the original home of the living being, the home of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, as an individual, not merging into all oneness like that. Prabhupada emphasizes that in the purport. And then he talks about being the servitor and the servitor, which I've already mentioned. And then, of course, he gives this example of how a part which is removed from a machine becomes useless. So if we are actually not connected with the Supreme Lord Krishna, then more or less our lives are useless. We have to be connected to Krishna. An interesting point here, he used the word disintegrated. The living beings who are in the material world are all disintegrated, parts and parcels of the Supreme Whole. So it's like, it has for me anyway, I just thought it has a double meaning, that we're not part of that whole machine, the whole, another part, but so that we actually disintegrate. When we're divorced from Krishna, we're away from him, then we disintegrate. Just like actually when the soul leaves the body, the body decomposes, it disintegrates like that. So, but that's also true on a kind of existential level, that we're not connected with Krishna, we lose all our power, our real life, our joy. We everything becomes base, low, and boring. Anyway, you get the idea, hopefully. So just to see one or two other points. Yes, another interesting point that I'd just like to pick up quickly is that in these spiritual planets, the Supreme Lord as Narayan predominates, and the healthy, unconditional living beings live there by rendering loving service to the Lord in the capacity of servant, friend, parents, and fiancé. So I thought that was interesting. He says fiancé. So fiancé is probably the most idyllic relationship, and the conjugal relationship, because all the responsibilities of household life have not started yet. There are no children, no need to pay all the bills. It's just the carefree start of a relationship, where you can just have fun. In other words, without all the heavy responsibilities of household life. They will come, don't worry. So that was just one little point. Yeah, at the end of this this purport, for verse 34, Prabhupada said, Bhishma Dev never forgot the Lord in his transcendental feature as the Partha Sarati, and the Lord was present personally before Bhishma Dev while he was passing to the transcendental world. That is the highest perfection of life. So to pass to the transcendental world is the highest perfection of life. Let's just try to remember that. Okay, we want to make a contribution in this world, and by helping to spread Krishna consciousness, it's improving the world, but ultimately, we want to go back home and give the opportunity to many other people to go back home, back to the transcendental world. Okay, just very finally and very briefly, I'm sorry for having perhaps spent too much time on the earlier parts, but the last verse says, thereafter both men and demigods sounded drums in honor, and the honest royal order commenced demonstrations of honor and respect, and from the sky fell showers of flowers. So interesting enough, the previous verse was saying all present there became silent. So first of all, they were awestruck. They were feeling wonder. What a great event we've witnessed. So they were completely silent. But here, the completely opposite happens. They sounded, both men and demigods sounded drums in honor. And the honest royal order commenced demonstrations of honor and respect. From the sky fell showers of flowers. So after the peaceful meditation, the realization of what has happened, such a great event of such a great personality passing from this world, then there's celebration, there's great respect, there's praise, glorification. Just like when a devotee leaves this body, we have a ceremony, or we have a remembrance ceremony where people give their memories of that individual. And that is actually very nectarian, and often we actually appreciate that person much in much greater depth than we did before. So we have to remember great personalities. And of course, any devotee is a great personality in one sense, maybe not a Mahajan like Bhishma Dev. So by remembering devotees, and especially by remembering Mahajans like Bhishma Dev, acharyas like the Goswamis, and our previous acharyas, Srila Prabhupada, Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, Gokishore Das Babaji Maharaj, Bhaktivinoda Thakur, Srila Vaishnava Sarvabhauma, Srila Jagannath Das Babaji Maharaj. Remembering them as much as we can is a wonderful thing to do, because it actually, by thinking of them, and glorifying them, as we do maybe during the Prema Dwani prayers, we actually acquire some of their qualities. Of course, the reverse is true. If we think badly of others, then we acquire their bad qualities. So it's very important that we do, like is done here, we glorify other devotees, we glorify especially the great devotees, previous acharyas, mahajans, etc., and all the great personalities, because we make advancement in that way. So that's one reason why this event is here, so that we can, in the Srimad Bhagavatam, so that we can appreciate what a great personality Bhishma Dev is, and therefore other personalities as well. And through appreciating them, we also acquire some semblance of their qualities. So it's nearly 8:45. If there are any questions, I will try to answer them. Any questions from anybody? Just scrolling through who's there. Thank you very much for attending. So anybody like to, yes, Pradyumna appreciates the practical points of being ready for death. Yes, that's an important point. Rakshita Radhika Devidasi, thank you. Okay, it's not a question. Well, she says that she may look forward to more classes, but let's hope that I have a little while to stay around. We don't know. Any questions from anybody? Okay.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Thank you for a wonderful class. Thank you. You made some really amazing points and really.
Who's that speaking?
It's Bhakti Mandas.
Oh, Hare Krishna. Thank you, Bhakti Mandas.
Yes, so many wonderful points on this matter. Really insightful thing you said was when someone dies, we appreciate them at that moment, even if they're not even a devotee. We appreciate the good things that they did, and those who have attended funerals before may have experienced that during their lifetime, may have not considered, who they were, what they did, and things. But then you find out a bit more when they've actually passed away, and you attend the funeral and you find out a bit more about them. And not only that, you appreciate their activities. So, what to speak of devotees?
Yeah.
So, when a devotee passes, we shouldn't think like this person is I'm talking more about this in today's times, that if a devotee passes, how we can actually, understand a bit more about them and appreciate, have gratitude of their service in Krishna consciousness, and celebrate and understand that better. Can you just expand a bit about that, please? Because that I feel is such a wonderful, such a thing to really understand as well, and not just consider it as a mundane thing. It's actually very important. Could you expand a bit about that? A few points about that, please.
About appreciating devotees.
Yeah, appreciating devotees.
Is that what you're?
Yeah. Also, when a devotee passes away, how we can remember that devotee and how we can understand their sort of their activities and be supportive to maybe family members and things.
Yeah. Well, I mean, there's some nice verses in the Sri Upanishad, which I've been trying to meditate on myself. Which, for instance, there's verse 7. One who always sees all living entities as spiritual sparks, in quality one with the Lord, becomes a knower of things. What then can be illusion or anxiety for him? So basically saying that all living entities are spiritual sparks. So we appreciate actually not, it was a good point you made actually, that not what to speak of devotees, any person, we should appreciate, because they are spiritual sparks of the Supreme Lord, and as such, they have some of that potency of the Lord, maybe a very small degree, but they do. Another thing is if there would be more time, I would have quoted from the Upadeshamrita, also verse 6, especially about pure devotees. Rupa Goswami says, being situated in his original Krishna conscious position, a pure devotee does not identify with the body. Such a devotee should not be seen from a materialistic point of view. Indeed, one should overlook a devotee as having a body born in a low family, a body with a bad complexion, a deformed body, or a diseased or infirm body. According to ordinary vision, such imperfections may seem prominent in the body of a pure devotee, but despite such seeming defects, the body of a pure devotee cannot be polluted. It is exactly like the waters of the Ganges. And so basically, yeah, we just should see the spiritual essence of everyone, that they are spiritual sparks. Ultimately, they are devotees, whether they appear to be or not, and appreciate that and magnify that as much as possible. But basically, yeah, try to understand the tattva, jiva tattva, that they are, and also all their family members as well, spiritual sparks. So we should want to support them as well. Let's just go on to Sachitanaya. He says, Prabhu, how do we not let our aches and pains overcome our Krishna consciousness? Maybe some tips. Okay. Okay. Well, one thing I've learned is not to fight against it. Experience it. Allow it to happen. It's a bit based on mindfulness, to be honest with you. If you're fighting against it, or you're just pushing it down, trying to ignore it, then somehow or other things seem to take on more strength. Ignoring meaning like just taking pills, to avoid. Everything is experience. Everything is an experience, and if we just realize it's part of life, and we sort of like ease into it, and often then you'll find it's actually because the suffering is because we get mentally into it. Oh, we're lamenting. or we're fearful it's going to get worse, or, you know, but actually the original pain is usually not as bad as, you know, the lamentation that comes with it. So anyway, there's a whole kind of like practice, you know, how to be conscious of what's going on in your body, knowing that actually the body is part of Krishna's energy. It's part of his external energy, and so value it, you know, not be attached to it, but accept whatever's going on is a result of my previous activities, and Krishna's allowed it for my benefit, and actually I should try to be grateful for everything. Anyway, that's just we can talk more about it if you want privately, but basically, yeah, don't fight against it so much, accept it, be grateful as much as possible. Any other questions? Okay, well, thank you, Karuna Chaitanya, S. Panta, Dilip, Bhaktiman Prabhu, Hitesh, iPhone with no name, Gokuleshwari, KCD, not quite sure who that is. Rakshita Radhika, thank you. Rati Manjari, Sachitanaya, Braja Devi, Panaparama, Pradyumna Prabhu, iPad 1, Manu, Ripan Chandra Vaidya, Shantanu, Princey, and M's iPhone. Thank you all for staying with it. I hope it's been of some benefit to you, and look forward to meeting you all in due course. Hare Krishna. Hare Bol.
Hare Krishna, Gaura Krishna Prabhu. Thank you so much for a wonderful class. We hope to hear more from you in coming weeks.
Well, not too much, I hope. I think there's plenty of other devotees who can speak. Just
Thank you.
much better than I can. Thank you. Hare Krishna.
His Grace Gaura Krishna Prabhu ki jai.
Hare Krishna Prabhu, thank you for a wonderful class.
Thank you.
Gaura Bhakti Vrinda ki jai.
Hare Krishna, thank you, Prabhu, for wonderful class.